Grace, you want to introduce our speaker?
Yeah, I'd love to. Hi, Laura. Um,
Hi.
hi. I'm just going to read some of the bio that you gave us. And for those of you who have never met Laura before, she is the Texas A&M AgriLife commercial horticulture extension agent for Tarrant County. You provide continuing education and problem-solving services to anyone trying to earn a living in horticulture, from green industry professionals to fruit, vegetable, and ornamental plant growers. Before taking the job in March 2008, you were University of Florida / IFAS, whatever that means, commercial horticulture extension agent for 7 years. Let's see, you're a sixth generation Texan, a graduate of Eagle Pass High School. You earned a Bachelor of Science in Horticulture and a Master's of Education in Agricultural Education from Texas A&M University in College Station. Um, you're an ISA certified arborist, a Texas certified nursery professional, all this in caps, and a Texas Department of Agriculture licensed pesticide applicator. What most of you would love to do that because of the problem with privet and uh, having to have a licensed pesticide applicator to kill the privet. But anyway, and Laura also serves on the boards of Region 5 of it's Region 5, not V, right? Of the
Yeah, that's
Texas
fine.
Nursery and Landscape Association, the Cross Timbers Urban Forestry Council, and the International Plant Propagator Society - Southern Region of North America. And that's what brought you to South Africa as a delegate to the International Board. So I'd love to hear about your trip.
That's great. Thanks, Grace. That is what took me to South Africa. So that's pretty cool. South Africa is a place I had always wanted to go. And this photograph kind of illustrates the reason why. Um, on one side, the left side of the screen, you are looking at a parking lot in South Africa. And you may see a plant that is familiar to you as a lover of the wildflowers of Texas, growing in that kind of bioswale in the parking lot. And then on the right side of the screen is a photograph I took last week in Tulsa, Oklahoma. That plant with the orange flowers in the middle is Leonidas, the lion's paw plant, which is, of course, a South African plant that grows really well here in Texas and Oklahoma. So we have a lot of challenges with our climate in both places, and we have some plants that are really well adapted to facing those challenges. So that's kind of the reason I was so excited to go to South Africa. It's really some unique plant communities, and a lot of the plants have the adaptations that we look for in plants that are going to be ready to face the challenges of our increasingly extreme climate. So this is the organization that took me there. IPPS is plant producers. We do have kind of like me, sort of academic people and also people that work in public gardens. But a lot of the people that are members of IPPS are nursery growers. And so we did visit tons of nurseries, which I won't show you picture after picture of plants growing in nurseries, but I will show you a few things. This is just a little example. This was a restaurant that we went to in Nysa, which you can see where that is on the map. You are here. And that's Annette Lawrence Owen, and she's pointing out her home in near Surrey in England. So it's kind of an interesting group. They're from all over the world. They're growing plants in all kinds of different places and get together to help each other and learn and share information and do a better job and communicate. We did see lots of animals. People are always like, oh, did you see this? Did you see this? We did see lots of animals in South Africa. I didn't take that many pictures of animals because I'm just a plant person. So yes, there are lots of great animals there. And we did see them, but I didn't I didn't take enough pictures. People are like, are you gonna take any pictures of this? Oh, well, no, you know. But I took a picture of this little plant. So that's kind of me. One of the great things about IPPS or any other international organization that you might belong to is you get to spend time with people there who know the place that they are living. You can see in this photograph, this is my friend Karen, and this is her iNaturalist page. So I thought that y'all would enjoy seeing someone who makes a lot of observations on iNaturalist, which is, I know some of you also do that. So it's kind of cool to just see all over the world, people kind of doing the same things, looking at things, taking pictures, learning more plants and animals and insects, and sharing that information with others. So she was just a lovely person to hang out with. Works in a nursery too, which we'll see in a minute. This is the trip that I took. You can kind of see we started out here in Cape Town, which is kind of like right here. We did go down to the Cape of Good Hope. We went up a little bit on the this is the west coast of South Africa. We went up to this little area up here, Saldanha Bay, and then we came back down and we spent time in several different places. One place that we spent quite a bit of time was Stellenbosch, which is an agricultural area. So there were lots of nurseries. There were also wineries, there was fruit production, there was a lot of stuff in this agricultural area in Stellenbosch. Hermanus was what was on my first slide. This is as we're getting down here. And then we kind of headed west. We went up into a bit of what is the Karoo, which is a more desert-like environment, but mostly we were down here in what I'm talking about, which is the fynbos, which is this purple area. The fynbos is about the size of Portugal, I guess, more or less. So it's not a really large area, but it is a really great plant community. And we continued on. We went all the way over here to what is also called Port Elizabeth over here. And that was the end of our trip. But we went along through quite a lot of different environments in South Africa and saw lots of plants on our way. So when you talk about the fynbos, which just means fine bush in Old Dutch, you're talking about fine bush, lots of small plants with small leaves for the most part. And some of them are bigger. You can see the three main plant families in this picture. We have the Ericaceae, which are like heaths, like we think of in Scotland. You know, those are really small leaf plants that grow in really challenging environments. You can see the Proteaceae right here, which these beautiful flowers that look kind of like feathers are one of the first cut flowers I remember noticing as a child. Someone sent my parents a bouquet that had those feather flowers in them when I was in about probably first grade. And I just remember being fascinated by them because they look so different from anything I'd ever seen before. And then over here is the Restianaceae, which are reeds, and they don't have a lot of grasses in South Africa. It's not really, the soils are not really, as you know from studying prairies, a lot of prairies have really nice deep soils. A lot of these soils are kind of thin, rocky soils on top of sandstone, so they don't have a lot of deep soils. And they have these Restiaceaes, these restios, as they call them, instead of grasses in a lot of environments. It's a really diverse plant community, partly because it's been there so long. I think the fynbos, they say, has been evolving for about 2 million years, which a lot of the world was covered in ice 2 million years ago. So it's been a temperate climate for 2 million years, which is really interesting. So that's one reason they have so many more plant species. Like if you look at Ericaceae, which we, as I said, closely associate with Scotland, right? Like the moors of Scotland. There are 20 species of heather in Europe, and there are 652 in South Africa. So I didn't learn them all by any means. There are also a lot of geophytes in addition to those 3 big plant families. Some are really strange. Welwitschias are actually not in South Africa. This is in one of the Sandby facilities where they have research and kind of like a botanic garden setting. But Welwitschia is really a weird plant. It can live for 2,000 to 3,000 years. An individual plant that looks like this can live for 2,000 to 3,000 years, which is really strange. But also, geophytes are something that we know well, like iris, anything that basically can go underground and then come back up. And one of the reasons that they have so many geophytes is because they do have a fire maintained landscape. This is a really cool one. This was one of the most exciting ones to see. It's called candelabra flower, and it only blooms for about 2 weeks out of the year, but there it is. It just comes out of the ground like a kind of like a naked lady, or like a rain lily. It just pops up at a certain point in time, and look at how kind of unreal they look, just growing up out of the sand like that. So the proteas, the ericas, the restios, and then all kinds of geophytes are mostly the plants that make this what it is. Sandby is something that I mentioned. It's the South African National Biodiversity Institute. We got to go to 2 of their facilities. That picture on the left is one of them. That's the Harold Porter, which was down near Hermanus, where we looked at the first picture. You can kind of see has a similar kind of cloudy environment, and it does have a lot more trees than most parts of the fynbos. And then the other one was Kirstenbosch in Cape Town, which is a really famous garden, which you can visit anytime. But they do a lot of interesting things, kind of like Brit in a little bit of a way. They publish, they have a herbarium, they do some research, and they have gardens where you can look at plants. All right, so threats to the fynbos are kind of interesting. You mentioned privet at the beginning of the meeting, and invasive plants are a big deal everywhere. And as you might imagine, when you have this really diverse and rich plant community, you're concerned about invasive plants. The main problem that they have are invasive trees, which is really interesting. And part of the challenge is, and I did see burned areas, so I didn't really take enough good pictures of them, but part of the challenge when you have a fire maintained landscape is that trees really change fire behavior. So where there are trees and they don't burn, large trees, they don't burn. You've seen that in fire maintained landscapes before. Then you get a fire that doesn't open up the area like a fire that wouldn't have all those invasive trees in it. So a lot of the problems they have are like eucalyptus invading, which that happens in other parts of the world, some pine species and stuff invading. So they're really careful about invasive species because they have such a unique plant community, which obviously anytime you're trying to protect a unique plant community, the cross timbers, the blackland prairies, any unique plant community, invasive species are always a concern. This is a garden center, so they were, letting people know why they don't have certain things because they might be on that invasive list. Just a few interesting things about South Africa. they do what they call load shedding each and every day. And load shedding means that the electricity goes off because they don't have the infrastructure, the capacity to supply enough electricity to everyone. So every day electricity goes off. Everywhere you go has generators. So if you stay in a hotel, they're going to have some generators. And if the electricity goes off, you'll hear the generators come on, you'll see the lights come back on, and things will carry on. This is a nursery. And in that nursery, you know, or in any nursery, watering the plants is very, very important. So they have electricity to power their water pumps, which you can see the water pumps here. They also have generators, which you can see back here behind the fence. They have their generators very securely guarded generators, actually locked up behind a fence, because that's, of course, one of the things, even though these are enormous, that people steal frequently in South Africa. And then they also, as a third option, this is designed to attach to the power takeoff on a tractor so that they can, if they have to, pump the water out of the well to water the nursery with a diesel tractor. So they had to have that additional backup. It made us realize how much we appreciate how the electricity works most of the time, except for that time in February 2021 when it didn't work. And, you know, yes, Grace.
What do they use solar power for the generators or the pump? I mean,
Yeah, they do use solar power. A lot of the places, as you can tell, are quite sunny and open. So they do often, you do see a lot of solar panels. You do see a lot of solar panels. I do not know what the main sources of their electricity are, if they're, you know, coal plants or natural gas or, you know, hydroelectric. I really don't know, but they basically don't have the infrastructure to supply enough electricity for their population, is kind of the problem. And so every day they just shut it off in different places.
Is that a scheduled shut off, or do they just surprise people to do it when they need to?
Well, it's they're both. They will, sometimes people will know that the electricity is going to go off, and sometimes it just goes off.
Mm.
wow.
It's
Oh.
it's a big challenge to everyday life.
Is
Truth.
this only in rural areas or?
No, this is in the cities, everywhere in the whole entire country.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was kind of hard to believe because we do take that for granted. All right, this is a nursery that we visited. This is actually where Karen works, and I'm gonna see if this video will play. Pretty much everywhere we went, the workers were pretty excited to see us. I don't know why, but you know, they would get out and dance, and a lot of times when we went to dinner, people would get up and dance, and it was just kind of fun. So there was a lot of singing, dancing, which was really nice. But you know, just a big welcome to the nursery was quite enjoyable. Unemployment in South Africa is about 34%. So nurseries are basically, and other employers, I assume, basically incentivized to employ lots of people. Kind of the opposite of here, where everybody's trying to figure out how to do things without as many people, right? We're all like trying to, you know, automate so that we don't need as many people to do whatever, because our unemployment is about 3%. You would think in a country where there's 34% employment, they would not have a lot of immigrants seeking employment, but that's not true. Apparently, Zimbabwe has less opportunity for work than South Africa. So people come every day from Zimbabwe and immigrate to South Africa to find jobs and work in the country. It's just really, really tough. Okay, let me move on to the next one. Here's automation in plant production. In the nursery industry, there's a lot of really cool equipment, seeders, all kinds of things. This is an elipot maker, which you may or may not have noticed in plants you've purchased. But what it does is instead of having to have a plastic container for a plant, that's just a paper sleeve. It's a strong paper. It does have some plastic enforcement, but it's just a little thin bit of plastic in a paper sleeve. And it's stuffed with the media, and then the plant grows inside it. I have seen the small ones here in the United States, the small ones frequently in different nurseries. I hadn't really seen those big ones. But interestingly enough, and this place was growing fruit trees. When I got back, I was in Archie's Garden Land, and I looked at a plastic container holding a plum tree. And down inside of the container, you know how in the middle you can sometimes tell when a plant was stepped up. I could see this large elipot and a little bitty one inside that container. So I was like really interested to see what the root system looked like. And I am that person that will just, flip over a 5-gallon container and kind of pull the roots out a little bit and see what's going on. It was pretty great. So there were no circling roots in that container. The roots were growing out through that paper really nicely and not circling in the container, and I was impressed. But I hadn't really seen it in the United States until quite recently. That was like last week. Anyway, pretty cool. The other thing about automation, one place we went had a really great cedar, brand new from the Netherlands. They showed it to us. They were pretty excited about it. One of the first questions was, how many people does it take to run this cedar? And they were like, oh, well, in the Netherlands, 4, but here we use 12. And that's just because they want to keep people working. So it's a really interesting use, but they still do invest in automation because they can produce more and they can do some better quality things. Okay. Some things that I saw that really blew my mind. They're always looking for crops that they can export. Mostly they export things to Europe to bring money into the economy. And this is the largest shade structure I have ever seen. That's almost 25 acres under shade. And what they were growing here was blueberries. These are all blueberries. And they're not blueberries for sale. These are blueberries in fabric containers because the soil is not suitable for blueberry propagation production, just like it's not suitable here. They were in fabric containers and they're growing in the shade container, the shade structure, and they were blueberries for fruit production that they export to Europe. That's what it is. And it just kind of was amazing. But they're always looking for, opportunities to sell things, which is probably how I saw the proteas so early in my life. That's an export crop. So saw these like, export variety of fruit here. So lots of opportunities to grow and sell things into other markets. You can see that in their seasons, think about Europe, this blooms in August and they harvest it in November. So apricots in November, that would be the opposite of the Northern Hemisphere, season schedule. Grace.
I'm curious about that shade structure. Was that plastic? Please say no.
Well, is that plastic or not? It's polypropylene shade cloth. It's generally, it's kind of like a plastic structure. You're right. It's not plastic, like some greenhouse plastic is very short-lived, like you replace it all the time. This will last for many years, not forever, but it will last for many years. But it is, plastics, you're getting into a really interesting topic, and it's something that everybody in the nursery business is talking about. Plastics are a problem with the sustainability of plant production. And if you think about it, even in y'all's, if you're part of the growing team in Arlington at the Randall Mill greenhouse, you know, you're growing in plastic containers for the most part. So we really need to work on how we minimize the use of plastic in horticultural production. And I understand why people do it. It's inexpensive, it's, you know, functional, but I totally agree. I totally agree. Back in the olden days, the way they did shade structures was a lath house. So it was like wood, you know, that light could pass through. Yeah. And so you couldn't get, like with the shade cloth, you could go, okay, this crop needs about 30% shade, or it needs 50% shade, or it needs 70% shade. You can get whatever you want. With wood, you would have to build, you know, and it would be kind of complicated to get exactly what you wanted. So it's not easy. All right, onward. So just some fun things to look at. This is a very cool place called Babylonstoren. It was actually one of the early Dutch, you know, South Africa was colonized by the Dutch, one of the early Dutch farms, and now it's kind of an agritourism place that you can visit. They do have really extensive gardens and some great plant collections there, including these really rare tree-form yuccas that are native to South Africa. This is just more trees and invasive trees, and what are they doing about it? Just back to that. Water-wise. So once again, here's our Texas plant here for sale, along with other, you know, South African plants and roses and everything else. But they are always looking for, I mean, just like us, they have issues with water, and they're looking for those plants that are able to use less water in the landscape. A lot of those adaptations, when you heard the word fynbos and you thought about like fine or thin leaves, obviously that's a water saving adaptation, right? Lots of the things about the native South African plants are already water savers. Okay, but they do also have lots of succulents. These are just some succulents for sale. They tend to have a lot of succulents in the understory of the kind of the fynbos areas, the dry ones. Grass is like really exotic. This was about the only grass that I saw for sale in a place. This is just another little bit of landscape. You can kind of see a bunch of native plants that are in that landscape here. And once again, more native plants in a landscape. That was actually at a Sanby facility. Back to a nursery, they were propagating proteas, which was kind of cool. They were bench grafting these. So they take just like we do with fruit, they take a rootstock that's really vigorous, and then they graft a scion on there just like we do with trees, fruits, of a desirable flowering species. So it was kind of amazing to see all this being done. And this nursery only grew protea. It was a really large nursery that was just a protea producer. I just thought this was really interesting. One of those, you know, and I didn't even get the name of it, trees that fruits caudally. It's just a weird thing. Here's another plant you probably recognize, a Techomaria, growing in a nursery. And just the landscape should look kind of like a typical dry area to you. Okay, do y'all have questions for me? I didn't end up putting as many photos in as I could, but I just wanted to make it kind of fast for you. But yes, Grace, questions?
Are these all in private hands? I mean, do they or government subsidized or government owned, like the big
No.
nurseries? Because they're covering a lot of ground.
Yeah, they're privately owned, basically.
And
What
owned
is
by the whites, or can you tell? Or was there, I mean, is there anything like employee owned nurseries?
Ooh, yeah, I don't know. A lot of them, so some of them were definitely like, kind of like we have here, family owned, there was a family, they had workers that were local, but mostly a family that worked there and that owned the nursery. Others were larger. They are not subsidized by the government, but they're incentivized to employ people. That's the way they describe it, is that they're incentivized to employ people. And I don't know exactly how that is. I don't know if it's something in their tax structure. I don't know exactly how that works. Most of them are, they do have local markets that they sell into. Sandby is quasi-governmental, quasi not-for-profit, a lot like a lot of our botanic gardens. There's support from both sides on something like that. But yeah, go ahead.
No, are there any restrictions on selling to foreign markets?
Are there restrictions to selling to foreign markets? I don't know whether there are, placed upon them by the South African government. I would be very surprised. Now, placed upon South Africa by other governments, absolutely there are. So yeah. But they like most places where property values are not as high as they are in some really highly developed parts of the world. They do always produce crops for export. That's just a pretty regular thing in most places. This is my shopping basket at the Central Market the day after I got back. And I just thought it was pretty funny because we actually drank this wine in South Africa, and there's my protea and my, my little fynbos plants in a little bouquet, which kind of was like, oh my goodness. Anyway, so there you go. Thanks so much. I saw lots of different languages. There are actually 8 languages that are the official language of South Africa. Believe it or not. Yeah. And most places, most people do speak English. English works pretty well, but a lot of them do speak Afrikaans, and often would speak more comfortably in Afrikaans to each other, the Dutch ancestry, people of Dutch ancestry, but yeah.
I don't want to call this, but other than the blueberries, did you look at mostly plants for the ornamental market, or
Yes,
not?
we looked at mostly plants for the ornamental market, and a number of nurseries really specialized in local native plants. Even for this, there's actually one really small part of the fynbos, which is more endangered than the other parts, and which is mostly asters. So it's mostly composites. It's mostly, and we went to 2 different nurseries that specialized in plants for that, for restoration of that habitat. So who buys those? That's a really good question. I assume that the government does some, but they also sell them to just, the public, to people that want to plant native plants.
Now, can you tell us your main takeaways from this trip?
My main takeaways were, I guess I tried to hit that, like, that people all over the world are always, even going to places that we would not think that somebody would want to go to work, because it would be hard and you wouldn't be paid very much. Still, there are people somewhere in the world that want to go there because they have nowhere to work, and that's kind of, amazing. It's kind of amazing. I've seen it in other parts of the world too, but it was really pretty amazing to me. And that electricity is such a blessing, that was another big thing, because it's so hard. It really did give me those, flashback feelings to that time in February of 2021 when we didn't have electricity for several days, and how hard that was. I think about it every time there's a hurricane or anything like that. I think about people being without power, like they were in Houston this spring.
Did
Yeah.
you see any wind farms?
I did see wind farms. Yes, we did see wind farms. It wasn't shocking to me. They look just like the ones we have here in Texas. So, yes. Yeah, they are trying to develop just like here, as you might imagine, they have suitable conditions for solar and wind power. And so they are trying to develop energy infrastructure, but it's just the government, I don't know, the government probably doesn't have all the resources to incentivize people to do that or to support that, or, probably
Okay.
not.
Okay, Laura,
Uh-huh.
can you hear me? I went to South Africa just about a month or two ago, but my trip was different from yours because we saw a lot of animals. But I did notice they did overemploy people. We
Yes.
stayed at a hotel and there were just a lot of men just kind of standing around giving us directions that we really didn't need. But I did notice I also went to the Arboretum in Cape Town, and it was only native plants. They're very, very careful about just using native plants. But on the other hand, I didn't see a lot of landscaping the way we landscape because they don't live in neighborhoods the way we live in neighborhoods. It was just house
Right.
after house next to each other. They
Right.
did tell us the government did give homes away worth about $25,000 to people. But what they do is whoever gets one will rent it out so they have an income. And
Ah,
so they they are very poor. Part of it is they do to keep peace in the country. I think they do want to employ as many people as they can because, I mean, it is definitely a tremendously large Black population compared to the white population. And evidently, part of the uprising back in 1976 is because the schools were teaching Afrikaner. And the people said, no, we want to learn English because English, we can go out of the country and it's spoken other places. Afrikaner is only spoken in South Africa, along with many of these other native languages that go with the tribe. So there's a lot of native languages, but they're only spoken there. So people do, and people realize that they need to learn English. And this was part of the big problem in 1976. This kids in the schools, one particular school area started the revolution in the Civil War. And it's just very interesting that the history and how hard people try to get along. But it's kind of like the people that welcomed you in these nurseries. Everyone had a smile. They're very kind people, very soft spoken, not loud at all. It was really a wonderful trip.
yeah, I would highly recommend anybody to go there. If you're a plant person, I would say go to as many Sandby, the South African, biodiversity places, which is where you went. You probably went to Kirstenbosch. And they do use native plants and they are really interesting and great places to visit. It's an amazing country. It really
Well,
is.
Our trip was with Colette, and Colette does offer a wonderful trip because we did go to see Victoria Falls in Zimbabwe, and then we went to Botswana that has an over amount of elephants. They have like 160,000 elephants in Botswana, and they said they really needed to cull about 20,000. They have too many because the elephants eat everything. They eat a tremendous amount of food.
Well, they're big. Yeah.
They do, but then there won't be enough for all the other elephants.
Mhm.
And then we also did South Africa. It was a wonderful trip, and I don't think it was any more than what you would cost you to go to Europe, except for the plane fare.
Yes, I agree with that. Once you get there, everything's very reasonable because, the
Hmm.
cost of living is not as.
There was the plant that amazed me. There was one very large grass that was growing in this arboretum, and it said it would not germinate unless it had smoke.
Yep. That was probably a restio. It was probably not a grass, but a reed. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it looked like that. Yes, I thought that was the most interesting thing. It needed smoke in order to germinate. That was, anyway, it was a great trip. I learned a lot, and I learned a lot about the people. We don't know, We have so much. It's just our standard of living is so high. It's just unbelievably high. But I didn't hear anything about the electricity. That was
Oh,
never
really?
ever
That's
mentioned.
interesting. That's
That
really
was never ever mentioned to us at all about the
well,
electricity.
you know, so I've been on this international board for a while, and we have Zoom meetings just like we're having right now. And there's always someone from South Africa on there going, well, my electricity is going to go off in 5 minutes. So, so I'm going to say goodnight, or, you know.
Well, they love the tourists and they welcome the tourists. And
Yes.
our guide, said to encourage people to go because we love the tourists. And we were encouraged to tip a lot. And that was great,
Yeah.
because you know that it was very welcome and they can almost kind of bow to you when you do tip them. It's amazing. They're very, very grateful people and very friendly, very nice. It was a great trip.
Yes, Grace.
Do you have a feeling for how they handle their solid waste? I mean, like, do they compost? Do they reuse? Do they recycle? I know they recycle something, but just especially in the what do you call it, housing compounds, the estates.
Yeah.
Um,
So, you know, as you will see in other kind of less developed parts of the world, we did see some large, I don't know, like if you've been to Mexico City, you know, you've seen the Mexico City dump, or kind of like the landfill areas. We did see some areas like that. The nurseries were and I do have some cool pictures from the nurseries. One of them especially wanted to show us what they were doing and how they were doing it. The nurseries were great about composting. Almost all of them had some composting system. You know, you're always going to have some plants that you don't sell and plants that you know, can't sell or whatever. All of them composted, reused their media, made new compost that they used in production. So that was pretty standard in the nurseries. Probably also just because, you know, in horticulture, in a lot of places, we're very dependent upon peat, which is imported from, well, there's peat in Europe, there's peat in Canada. You know, there's not a lot of peat in South Africa. So they were working really hard to make compost their kind of peat substitute. And we're composting a lot. Recycling and reuse of things is kind of like my Depression grandparents. You know, they reused everything because they didn't have a lot of money to buy new things. You definitely see that. Recycling in terms of like, you know, was there like recycling containers? Well, I didn't see a lot of like traditional recycling like we would see, like, you know, put your aluminum cans here and your bottles here. And you know, I didn't see a lot of that.
are you ready to move there?
I don't know. You know, that has been a subject of conversation with a lot of people today. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that I have great confidence in the governmental systems in many places in the world. So I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, did I feel like I could live there? Kind of, you know, I felt like I would find it, but I feel like that in a lot of places. I don't know that, you know, that's that unusual. Anyway.
If you had money, it would be,
If you had money, it would be easy living. You're right. You're right. Yep.
it could be pretty rough.
Yeah, it could definitely be rough if you didn't have some resources.
What's
Absolutely.
all the houses we saw in, like in Pretoria, had on the fences, they had a fence around their house. And then on top of the fence, they had a rolled wire with like
Razor wire, yeah.
It's a form of razor wire. Then within that, they have a electric wire. So
Yeah, so we saw that around people's generators. That was mostly the thing that they were super worried about. Not so much just everywhere else. I didn't see as much of that, but I think in general, from what I understand, that like the Cape Town area and that part of of South Africa is thought to be the safer, kind of less violent, less theft, less.
It's the more wealthy part.
It's more wealthy. Exactly. Exactly. It is. We did see a few people's houses, that we knew, like, they're and they were nice. I mean, they were, places that you would live. Yeah. Absolutely. Though and this one area, this was funny, and I didn't take any pictures of these guys, but baboons were a real problem. So people had like houses that were like little, kind of like cabins or little vacation, houses. And they really had to be very secure because baboons would break in and like eat your food and tear things up and, and they somehow realized that people would do anything for their cell phone. So if someone wouldn't give them food or whatever, they would try to steal that person's cell phone, which was really interesting. Like that was the most valuable thing a person could have. And if you took the cell phone, they'd definitely give you their banana. So it's funny.
Baboons are pretty smart.
Yeah, pretty smart.
So-
Pretty smart.
I guess to make a big circle and come back to the topic, what are the plant adaptations that struck you, we could perhaps apply here?
Plant adaptations that we should apply, or that the plants were really applying, are
Yeah,
just
well.
the same things you always hear. Small leaves, thin, thick leaves versus thin leaves. Thick leaves are water holding and water storage capacity, or less water loss from thick leaves. Let's see what else. Hairs on leaves. A lot of the plants are kind of silvery, like the proteas are all kind of silver leafed. Those hairs on leaves are holding water close to the stomata. A lot of them have some of them are those CAM plants, so they have that crassulaeic acid metabolism, so that they can they can have their gas exchange at night when it's cooler, basically, just like cacti and stuff can. So, we saw all those same plant adaptations that we see in dry parts of this country or anywhere else you go.
How bad is the water situation there?
The water situation, that was interesting. The nurseries that we went to all used well water. They had well water that they had access to. But you probably wouldn't build a nursery if you didn't have some access to water. City water seemed to work all the time. We were never anywhere where the water wasn't on. So I don't know what all the water resources are. It's basically like a sandstone. All the underlying mineral is sandstone. So I don't know, what the aquifer situation is really, but they did have access to groundwater.
Did you come across any water purification, desalination plants?
We
they
did
have all
not.
this one?
We did not. I did not see any use of ocean water or
Interesting.
salty water. I don't think they had naturally salty water, or I drank the water everywhere. I didn't, there was no real concern. No one told us not to drink the water, or to be concerned about.
You never got sick?
Huh?
You never got sick?
And I didn't get sick. Now,
Oh,
some
no.
people got sick, but I don't know that it was the water. It could have been something they ate. It could have been anything. But, I did drink water. Didn't worry about it too much. So, there you go.
Can I carry your bags next time?
Yeah, I wish everybody had a chance to go to a place like that. It's just so amazing to see, just such a different part of the world, and see things that you recognize and things that you've never seen before. So it's kind of neat anyway.
The flight is a little long to get there.
The flight is way too long. Yeah, that's the worst part. And also, the environmental impact of you flying across the world is kind of significant. So you got to worry about that. But I don't know. It's something that I don't regret doing. But anyway, there you go.
Fascinating. Really makes me want to go there.
Any other questions? We are 3 minutes shy of 8, so we're right on time to thank.
Well, one last question. They don't use tidal power for powering generators?
They don't use what?
Tidal powers from the sea, the waves?
Not that I saw anywhere. Did not see that. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen, but I sure did not see it. We didn't see
Yeah.
it.
I think the oceans in South Africa are pretty rough. I mean,
They are. Yeah,
But
definitely.
that's what you need is the power of
Yeah.
the waves to
Yeah.
turn it.
Yeah,
to
I
the
did see the ocean and it was rough. Yeah.
Yeah.
the Cape of Good Hope, that just destroyed a lot of ships.
Mm-hmm.
And surfing is considered to be one of the things that people go to South Africa for the big waves.
Well, I wish him a lot of lithium somewhere to build batteries and have storage capacity for to try to minimize those power shortages and outages.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was fascinating.
Thanks. Thanks for inviting me to talk.
I want to hear more about the trees and why the trees, the fire and the trees. I mean, that relationship, because I didn't know that trees don't burn. I mean, I thought
Well,
you know,
some
the
do and
pines
some
burn from
don't.
the
Yeah.
bottom up.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes some of it is that it makes it just makes different fire behavior than what they are adapted to, right? So they're adapted to having fire, but it's not the kind of fire you have in a forest. It's a different fire behavior.
I mean, I just don't get
And
it.
I wouldn't say I'm a fire behavior expert either, but that was one of the reasons. And we did see different places burning. That was a normal thing that we saw almost most days when we were out and about. We would see some fire somewhere.
There's all that energy just blowing away. Just
Yeah.
makes
Yeah.
me crazy. It needs to be captured and reduced. Well, thank you.
Laura,
Thanks.
thanks so much. Enjoyed it.
Thank you. Y'all
Thank
have a
you.
good evening.
You
This will
too.
be
Thank
posted
you.
on our YouTube channel, so
Next time you're in Arlington, give us a call.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Grace.
Bye-bye.